Okay, so here at NSD we have been developing a questionnaire design and documentation tool. Stig Norland is the developer of the tool and will show the tool to you afterwards. I have been working on the conceptual side, and I'll give a little introduction of the background of the tool. So first, the QDDT, as we call it, abbreviated. What is it? It is a web-based tool. It is open source under the GNU public license version 3. So it can actually be grabbed by everyone and installed and used. The purpose of the tool is to capture questionnaire design process of complex surveys, in particular, like those surveys that develop master or source questionnaires that are going to be fielded in various contexts and need to be adapted or amended from that source or master questionnaires. The project is funded by the Decision Series EU project and by NSD itself. When using the tool, multiple actors can work in the tool at the same time from different locations. You can develop research concepts, related questions, sequences of questions, and instruments modules in the tools. That means also full questionnaire that can be a combination of those modules. You can also add comments to the content that is entered, and you can add external material that is related to that content. Most importantly, this tool is designed to keep track of the changes throughout all those complex processes that complex surveys go through during the design process. And the versioning system is very well developed to let the user document why changes were made and keeping track of the history at the level of the individual items. So you can track the history of an individual questions, if you like, over time, or of a code list or response domain, if you would like that. One feature of the tool, the element entered can be developed and managed separately from each other. That is useful for reuse of the components. Both within the same instrument, you can have the same response domain going on at several times, and over time you can reuse the same question, for instance. And the QDDT also have a feature that you can publish metadata you want at different steps in the workflow for discussion, for exporting to a different tool, like a pilot questionnaire, for instance, or just one question for discussion. Importantly, QDDT is based on the DDI lifecycle metadata standard, like John said, version 3.2, and that makes metadata from the QDDT findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. While Dasish, also two other tools were planned, a translation management tool developed by Metadata and a question variable database. The question variable database is now a Collectica tool. And what is the background here? The European Social Survey, or the ESS questionnaire design process, was the core use case, but we used other surveys also as use cases, and we looked at standard for business processes also when we developed it, so it's not only ESS. The ESS, it's a biannual attitude survey covering more than 30 countries. It has since the start had a strong focus on methodology. The design process is that two topical questionnaire modules are elected for each ESS round, with two different teams developing them. And this process of designing a single questionnaire or module takes 2 years. So therefore, you can understand how important it is to keep track from the start of all the changes that happen. And multiple actors are involved. You have the questionnaire designers, you have national coordinators from the different countries involved, you have a translation team, you have different types of methodology experts also that are involved in developing and commenting on this. And the ESS headquarters at City University of London is responsible. For a long time, that is since the first round of the ESS, the survey has been using Word templates to document the steps of the questionnaire design workflow. As you can see here, through one kind of development round, there were like 12 different templates, and you see how the questions were expressed and comments added and so on. Very difficult to keep track of everything. But with a tool like the QDDT or similar, it would be possible to develop content and to kind of select for which purpose you want to publish, and then see and concentrate just on the thing that you want to discuss or export. As you can see here, a bit like how DDI build things, when you have a question like this in a questionnaire, it's split up to different parts, and that makes reuse possible over time. So you have here, for instance, the response domain, the response categories, you have a question text, you have more instrument related components and so on that can be added to the question as in the instrument, or question construct as you call it. You can have different levels of the question. And here is the ESS questionnaire design flow. As you can see, it is an iterative process. As I told, it takes 2 years. And another thing we have is DDI XML export, that we are now verifying that. It is under testing to be able to export all the content we develop here into the translation management tool, and also the collector-based QDDT. And thanks to these people who collaborated with us in making the QDDT. And here is the address to the project site and our address if you would be interested to contact us about this tool or to learn more. And now I want to give the word to Stig to show you the tool. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. I'm going to give you a tour of the tool. First, I can describe some of the concept hierarchy that we have developed, and then I will have a case where we're going to add a question construct to an existing sequence. So first, the concept hierarchy consists of surveys that are subdivided into studies and modules and concepts. You don't have to use this concept hierarchy to use QDDT, but when you're developing questions, that's important if you're gonna go back and see how it's been used and changed over time. So I created a test survey, workshop European Social Survey. And then I go down a level, I will see the studies. We have one study that has been archived. That means it's read-only and you cannot remove or delete it. And here's ESS round 8. Here you will see a description, and then you can go to the level below. You can also notice in the browser heading, you will see the path where you are. So we added two modules, Module A and Economy Activity. And it's Module A we are going to explore. In Module A, we have three concepts: social trust, time spent consuming news media, and internet use. And when you create a concept, you can associate question items with the concept. So, for instance, internet use. I can search for a question item, and what I want to associate is net use. And when I find a question, I have to select a version. All the elements in QDDT are provisioned, and they will have a revision history, and you can browse back in time to see how a question item has evolved or any other element in QDDT. So this is the first version. It was created a little bit more than a week ago. You can also have a look at version 2. You can see we have added a response domain. And this is the last revision, and you can see the response domain was changed. So now I associated a question item with a concept. So this question will measure this concept, and we will have another one added. Net time. And this question has only one version. So now you could, yeah. So now version 1 of this element is associated with these two questions in these specific versions. Later, this question can be changed or added or removed, but this association will be there forever, unless you change it, of course. Even if you delete the question item, it will still have a reference here, and you can see when it was used and how it was used. And you can also have a preview of the question item. All right. And we also want to add a question here. It's already here. So you can also add an answer and test and see how it looks. Right. So now I want to create an example question construct for you. And I start with a question construct this time. And what I want to create is something that looks similar to this. This is a question from an old survey. So I will call it B27. and it has a card, a touch card, and I can also add a card. So this print card is also associated. And there's also some statement instructions here. So I will add this as an instruction. This instruction hasn't been created before, so I created it. And this can also be a description. All right, so we have added some instructions. Now I need to create the question, but first I will just save this. So this is an empty question construct with no question, and this question hasn't been created yet, so I will go to questions and I will create a question. I have a question text, and I can also add intent. Intent is very useful when you want to translate a question item. And I also want a response domain. I want a scale domain. So we already created a scale domain that will fit our needs today. So here's the question and here's the response domain. And we are happy. Now I can go back to the question construct. And assign it a question item. Now this question construct is ready. We added some instructions. There's a question text and there's a response domain. And I can save it as a new version. And we have two kind of versions. We have minor version, which is basically a typo or maybe a change the name, but no meaning change. But now we added a question item, so that is definitely a meaning change. Edit question item. All right. Looking at this, we can now see that there's no missing values or response domain. So I will have to go back to the question item and add missing. And I guess this will be the right refusal. Don't know. Yes. 77 and 88 is the code. So now we added the missing values. And I have to save it another time. It's also a meaning change. So now we have a complete question item added into a question construct. The difference between a question item and a question construct is that all the instruction might differ depending on if it's a paper or if it's an online questionnaire you're using, for instance. You don't use a show card online. It will just look like you're looking at it now, basically. At least a preview. All right.
Fantastic. That's really, really interesting. Have you finished up now, or you got a couple more things to do?
No, is the time up?
I think. Well, if you have a couple more minutes, and then.
All right. So you can also add the question construct to a sequence.
Mm.
And now it will show up in the sequence. And this preview is basically what you would see in an online questionnaire. Oh, wrong version. Or maybe I forgot to save. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So when you add it here, you can also change the position with the drag and drop. You can save. And you see it will be here. And this section can be reused when you create an instrument. So here's the same sequence in a instrument, and of course you would have many sequences in an instrument, and they can also be hierarchical, so they are nested. I guess there's a test here showing now. Maybe if I yeah, here's a test. You can see there are some hierarchies with subsequences within a subsequence. Yeah, also we have a feature, a language feature. So you can basically translate parts of a tool, a sequence, or question construct, and the different, for instance, different agency would have a different languages typically. So we know we had Norwegian here. You could have Arabic. Here we have an Arabic text there. Yeah. So you can use different languages within the tool and filter, but usually you just stick to one language. Yeah. We also have publication, which will help you with the workflow. So typically you will you will add some elements. Here you can see I have the same element, test ESS 10, version 2.4 and version 3. And we're probably going to discuss the differences between them and what we like or dislike about it. And on all this publication, you can also add comments. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah, you can also export these elements as a PDF report or as XML, which can be imported in other tools. Yeah, I think my time is up. Any questions?
Yeah, that was really great, Stig. And thank you for those the demonstration, also the presentation at the beginning. If anyone's got any questions, I want to put them in the chat. Please do so. I've got a couple of questions while people are doing that. I mean, I suppose it's more for Hilde, really. I mean, what has been the reactions by the survey teams at the various countries to using this tool over using Word documents? What's their sort of general reaction been to that?
Well, as you may know, I'm not so much involved with the ESS anymore, but I think the reaction has been good. For some time, the tool has been going through a major upgrade, and new functionality has come up, so it hasn't been in use. But the ESS team is now starting again to use this. So it will be very interesting to see now with the new things like the sequencing instruments that are new. And but in general, there has been a good response. Maybe you who were at the EDI conference in last year saw Luca Salini presenting their use of the QDDT, and I think, yeah, it may help a lot.
So, I mean, until recently, I think it was mostly used for questionnaire development, so the actual question development, and now you've added this additional functionality, so you can actually generate the question itself. Is that right?
Yes, and for the export also, it's very useful to be able to kind of send things away in larger chunks, not only individual question construct package. In a package, you can now develop a full instrument and send the full thing. So that's much more useful for the ESS or other service in total, because then not only the questionnaire developers are kind of helped out, but also later processes can kind of profit from it.
So we've had a question from David Barraclough from OCD. So what is the link between this QDDT and DDI?
Oh, well, that was in the early, when they started this, DDI lifecycle wasn't so old, but like myself, I worked a long time for surveys and at the European Social Survey from the very start of it. And when DDI lifecycle came, I saw at once this could be very useful as a kind of backbone or kind of basis for the conceptual model of this tool. So it's kind of based on this, and in the beginning, Achim Wagerov from the DDI Alliance helped us also with the DDI and the conceptual model, and yeah, so it is kind of based on that.
We've had a question from Ada Sanchez at CLS. So she said, many studies use questionnaires in Word or Excel format. Is there a way of importing existing information into the QDDT, provided the information is properly structured, other than manual entry?
No, we don't have any import functionality.
No, not yet. So that could be on the wish list, maybe for new things, but there's no import yet to the tool.
But it would take him. It would import a DDI 3.2, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So just to do a bit of a closer, we've got a number of tools which would help people do that sort of stuff. If you're interested in that, we can certainly give you some advice on the most straightforward way to do that. So a question from Gareth Mahoney: would you ever see this as a software as a service type of web platform?
Yeah. Right now we only provide a QDDT test for anyone to test it out. We haven't really nailed down a price model, if I'm correct. But if you contact us, and if you want to have it as a paid service, I'm pretty sure we can kind of make it with an agreement. But you can test it out for free. QDDT test.
Okay. So we've had a question from Ada again, but I'll come back to that one. From Maggie Hancock, also at CLS. Is it possible to export a variable list to be used in a data spec, or would this be via the XML export?
Actually, we don't have any variables here. It's only it's not the responses, only the questionnaire. But you can export a complete instrument as XML DDI 3.2.
So question from Tillman Reinelt, if I've said that correctly, I apologise if I haven't. Is there a way to document item sources, e.g. from which study an item originates?
Yeah, kind of.
In what sort of way would that be?
Well, you could. I see. We can we kind of turn it up momentarily, but usually you can go into a question item and you will have a list of all concept that contains it.
So would there be like a notes or a link to be able to link to something from that?
That would be a kind of a list.
And if the tool is in, if the question is in the tool, you can have a kind of based on reference, and there is a vocabulary to document, which is the relationship between the original question item and the one you have amended. For instance, if a ISSP also would use the tool and the base one of the questions of an existing ESS question, they can make a based on reference, and they can describe that this is a variant of the source and what they change and so on.
Okay. And then just the last question, because we have to move on in a minute. So this is from Ada again. Have you worked with any fieldwork agencies using QDDT at all yet? Do you know?
Well, this is more for the development of the source and master questionnaires, because as you see, it's very focused on the development and on a lengthy development and to taking in lots of stuff and processes in it. So we haven't put, if anyone would be interested, they would be welcome to contact us, and we can make a test user for them with an own agency, and they can have their own environment in the test server and try out the tool. And then if somebody are interested, they can discuss collaboration or maybe to to have a kind of, yeah, a paid use or something of the production version.
I think this reflects different ways different surveys are developed. I think in some countries and some places that the survey managers do it all and then hand it over to the agency, whereas some places are more collaborative between the agencies and the survey managers. It depends on the study and the country and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That's really, really interesting.